All right. Um, Thank you, everybody who has joined us in person today and on YouTube for our Naloxone administration training here at the River Falls Public Library. My name is Kyle Van Blaricum. I'm a certified peer support specialist with Northwest Passage. I also am contracted by St. Croix County Behavioral Health.
And I'm Sophie. I work with Northwest Passage Transitions, and I'm contracted as well with St. Croix County Behavioral Health. And I am also a certified peer specialist.
So we're here tonight to show you how to administer Narcan for one, how to identify signs of an overdose, and hopefully raise some awareness and dispel some myths. Because there's a lot of, I'd say, bad information out there about Narcan. So hopefully we can, address some of that stuff. Yeah. So we're going to be working off the Wisconsin Department of Human Services official training. We're both trainer of trainers.
Yep,
So
for the DHS.
For DHS. So there's a lot of information. We're going to try to condense it all into about a half hour. At any point you have any questions, feel free to interrupt us. We want this to be more of a conversation. Yeah.
All right. And what is an opioid, Kyle?
So an opioid could be a huge variety of things. Most commonly would be like heroin, right? Or fentanyl is a big one right now, but also prescription drugs. They're all derivatives from the opium plant. So there's synthetics and
synthetic and natural.
Natural. Okay. So like heroin would be natural, opium, fentanyl would be synthetic. So
kind of goes into it. There's different ways, obviously, to do opiates. You can swallow them, you can take them as pill form. The blue 30s is a really common form of fentanyl that's out right now. If you ever see little blue pills, they say 30 on one side. And then you can smoke it, snort it, inject it.
Yeah, so opiates are prescribed by doctors to manage pain, not as commonly as it was at one point. It causes a feeling of euphoria, contentment, and or detachment. And it lasts about 3 to 24 hours, depending.
The potency.
Yeah. Obviously, in large amounts, it can cause an overdose, which is where you essentially stop breathing. And that's where could be life-threatening. So all right.
The opioid receptors. So in our brains, we have opioid receptors, right? And when we ingest the opioid, whether it be through smoking, snorting, taking a pill, they attach to the receptors. And basically what naloxone is it bounces it off of the receptor and replaces it. So we'll kind of get more into that later. Kyle, do you want to talk a little bit about that? That's fine.
The naloxone? Opioids bind and activate receptors in the brain, triggering the release of dopamine, a neurotransmitter linked to learning, pleasure, and reward. Over time, use changes both the amount and sensitivity of the dopamine receptors, causing users to need a continuous supply. So your tolerance goes up over time. It requires more and more and more. This is kind of a visual of how that looks.
We kind of already went through the examples, but these are some prescription medications that are opioids.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And
some of them are synthetic and some of them are natural. Morphine is actually a natural opioid, which is kind of surprising, I think, to some people. Anybody have any questions about this?
We all know what opiates are.
And also for these, they can also be ingested through snorting, smoking, and swallowing. So those prescription and then illicit opioids, we kind of went through fentanyl, heroin. I heard recently, one of my friends works at a treatment center and they said there's even a newer opioid. I cannot remember what it is and I meant to look into it because I just heard about this recently, but they're finding it laced in a lot of the heroin and fentanyl supply now. So there's many of them. I guess she said there's multiple, but there's one that's been popping up a lot more than others. So just know that this is gonna continue to grow.
Mhm.
With such a strong drug that's out there, it's just gonna continue to list it.
And also what they're finding too is like heroin isn't even heroin anymore. It's actually harder to find heroin at this point. It's mostly fentanyl. So it's a lot cheaper to make. So they're finding that, it's easier
You
to
can
make.
make it in a lab instead of,
Right.
having to transport it from usually out of the country. It's just really, there's a lot of it out there. And something I like to mention too is I was at a conference, I think in October, it was a recovery conference. And I was in one of the sessions, this lady, she's from Dane County, and she mentioned how they tested it for the year of 2022, I think it was. Yeah, 2022. They tested all of the confiscated heroin, and 100% of it was laced with fentanyl. Not 99, not 90, 100% had fentanyl in it. So there's not even such a thing as just heroin anymore, at least in Dane County. I can't say across the nation, but it's in everything. And here's just the visual.
It's a good visual because it kind of breaks down like how much heroin compared to how much fentanyl. So it's the same, whatever.
And then carfentanil is also very popular now. You hear more about the fentanyl, but so I've been sober for about 3 years. I'm a person in recovery as well from opioids. And when I got sober is when carfentanil was coming out. So yeah, it is. It's even stronger than fentanyl, just not as well known area.
All right. So recognizing the signs of an overdose.
Has anybody here, if you don't mind me asking, if you feel comfortable talking about, has anybody seen an overdose or have any ideas of what the signs might be? Could you take a guess of what an overdose might look like? Breathing. Breathing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Irritation or skin changes.
Very much so. Yeah, that's one of the top ones. Breathing is also a big one. If you hear either you stop breathing, all the overdoses I've seen, which is way too many, it's the gurgling. It's like where it's the restriction within the throat, and then I'm not sure. I don't know a lot about biology, but just there's like some gurgling noises that start happening before they stop breathing. Um, All right, so an opioid overdose happens when a toxic amount of an opioid alone or mixed with other drugs, which we'll get into later, overwhelms the body's ability to handle it. They'll stop breathing, their body will become clammy. It's mixing it. So here are some impacts on the body.
Yeah. So respiratory failure, obviously, stop breathing, lack of oxygen in the blood, vital organ shutdown, and unconsciousness. So it's about 2 minutes without oxygen to your brain, and you can actually have brain damage. So it doesn't take very long.
And here are some more symptoms. Pale skin, gray. I usually see the fingertips always get blue. The lips, the fingertips, the skin turns really clammy and looks wet, pale. The body's limp. Usually, it's called knotted out. You might see it. I come to River Falls quite a bit, either for work or for family and friends. I saw somebody recently. I was driving through downtown and they were on a bike, and I cannot believe that they were still riding the bike really slowly, but you could tell he was definitely on fentanyl. I know it because I've been through it. But his body, he was knotted out riding his bike and swerving, and thankfully he stopped. I stopped and kind of watched him. He stopped and sat down on a bench, but it was just like I kind of sat there for a little bit and just watched him. But yeah, it's common. You usually can tell by their body if they're on opiates. All right.
All right. So what is naloxone? So like Sophie said, naloxone is a medication that essentially knocks the opiate receptor or the
Opioid off the receptor.
right. So it works temporarily. So that's a huge part of this is like you administer Narcan, the individual comes to, starts walking around, they can essentially go back into withdrawal if they don't receive medical attention. So it's very important to get law enforcement involved, call 911, get them medical attention because it's pretty common, especially with the fentanyl, that they can go back into that overdose.
And I like how somebody explained it in a training I went to a while back, but she said, like if you're at a parade and people throw out, merch and stuff like that, those little magnets that you get and how they're just like, they're not the best magnets, right? Like you put it on your fridge and they kind of fall off after some time. So that's kind of what Narcan or naloxone is. And just so you know, naloxone is the actual name,
Yep.
is the generic name brand, and then Narcan is the same thing. But so yeah, it's similar to that, where it's not going to hold for long. It's kind of temporary. It will usually restore the breathing as long as the person gets enough in their system. It will make them come back, but just know that they might fall back into that overdose once that wears off. So
It's safe for children, pregnant women, animals. I've heard stories of people giving it to their dog.
yeah, I just heard a story recently of their dog getting a hold of the medication, and then they gave the dog the naloxone, and they came out of their overdose. Totally safe.
A common question that people have is, well, if I suspect somebody's overdosing and they're not, maybe it's something else, and I give them Narcan, is it going to hurt them? And essentially the answer to that is no,
Absolutely not.
unless they have opiates in their system. That's the only, and it's not going to hurt them, obviously. It's
There's absolutely no effects other than removing the opioid off the receptor. So if a person is stone cold sober, you could take it right now and you wouldn't feel anything. There's no effects whatsoever since I have no opioids in my system. So this kind of just goes through all that.
Another big one too, no potential for misuse or getting high. A common misconception or something that I hear is, well, if we give people Narcan, aren't they going to just use more, right? And nobody wants to get Narcan. We kind of discussed that earlier. Usually if someone is overdosing and they get Narcan, it is going to put them into withdrawal symptoms pretty quickly. And I know, well, both of us can speak to that. Nobody wants to go through withdrawal. So, I mean, you spend most of your use avoiding that feeling.
Yeah.
So, just, yeah.
Drug addicts typically, and I can say this from my own personal experience, as a person who always did carry Narcan before even it was this easily accessible, I didn't carry it for myself. Like I did not want to be hit with Narcan because I knew what that would mean. I'd go right away into withdrawals. I spent my whole addiction trying to stay out of withdrawals, right? I carried it for my friends because I was constantly seeing people overdosing. And so yeah, just know that it does not promote continued drug use. It really just saves people's lives. That's the point of having it, is just to save people's lives so they can get to a point in their life where they are ready to get sober. Yeah, I think that's an important point to get across. So how does naloxone work? I think we kind of basically went over this. Here's a visual of it. The naloxone kicks the opioid off the opioid receptor in the brain and replaces it. It doesn't stay there for long, like we mentioned. So it's important too. And especially I've seen, some of the worst overdoses that I've witnessed with like my friends and stuff. I have a friend that he got Narcan, I think 8 times. He had like, I think 4 of his ribs broken, trying to resuscitate him. That was from fentanyl. And then another person, I was actually doing my internship at a treatment center, and somebody there overdosed from taking a fentanyl pill. I think he got Narcan like 6 or 7 times as well. So, I mean, depending on, the strength of the either medication or the illicit drugs, you might need to have a lot of these on you, but even just having 2 of them on you is better than nothing. Because, either way, we're going to be calling 911 and they're going to hopefully be there pretty quick. So, this is for storage.
Yeah. So,
can we keep it in our car, Kyle?
No, you can't keep it in your car. It gets too hot or too cold. You want to keep it at room temperature.
Plus, it's a beautiful, 68 degrees outside.
All the time.
All the
right?
time, yeah.
Right.
60 degrees.
So your bag, I carry it in my laptop bag wherever I go. You want to keep
purse. I keep one in my purse.
Something like that, yeah.
And I do want to mention, because I did see it earlier on, it didn't get mentioned, but This is what we have here, which we'll go through, but this is nasal Narcan. There's many different forms of naloxone. So I also, before we became a part of the Narcan Direct program, a lot of the naloxone that's going around, and in Minnesota, actually, they only use the intramuscular kind. So that's going to be a little vial of liquid, and then it has the syringe, and that gets put right into the arm or the leg or the butt. So for this kind, you have to be really careful. I guess also for the intramuscular as well. You don't really want to leave it in your car. But
Yeah.
but I do like to mention, because as a person that was in drug addiction and lived that lifestyle there, I always kept it in my car during all the seasons. And if you have nothing on you, still use it. I've seen it work. So if you have absolutely nothing else, still call 911 and get try to.
They have a shelf life of how long? Is it 2 years?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And they all have expiration dates on it. But again, if it's all you got and it's expired, use it. So this is more so for the intramuscular, dispose of the sharps in the sharp container. All right. So
All right. So
here's the fun stuff.
if you suspect somebody is in an overdose, you want to start by doing the shake and wake. I also call it the verbal Narcan. Sometimes that's enough for people. If you tell them, I'm going to Narcan you, that's enough to snap them out of it, right?
And I can attest that before, where you're like, so, I've heard story, where, they'd be totally just nodded out, totally zoned out, and people are like, oh my God, they're overdosed, and then I had a friend tell me, I'm gonna Narcan you. And you just like jump over here, like, okay, no, I'm not that bad yet.
So
nobody wants to be
That's
Narcan.
not a crying wolf type of situation. You would mess with your friends.
Absolutely. It's just when so the intoxication that you get from the opioids, that's why people are nodded out, because that's just what feels good. You don't want to move. Your breathing is like, you could barely breathe, which eventually, if you do enough, will turn into an overdose. But it's hard to even talk, But if you hear the word Narcan, and if you're in active addiction, it's going to jolt you enough to be like, no, please don't put me in withdrawal. It's definitely not crying wolf. I can't.
So you want to get there, shake
to-
them, do a sternum rub, whatever you got.
Make sure that they're actually in the overdose and not just heavily, under the influence.
Call 911. There's depending on what training you watch, it says call 911. What?
So
Oh yeah. Okay.
sternum rub, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Call 911.
So call 911. The nice thing about calling them right away versus administering the Narcan is they can actually walk you through how to administer the Narcan. So it's helpful just to get another person. I know when everything's happening, emotions are high. Sometimes it's helpful just to have another person there. But you want to get them on the phone so somebody can get out there as quickly as possible. Yeah. So tell them where you're at, what you observed. They're turning blue. You can let them know that you suspect it's an overdose. You know, tell them everything, sit there with the person too. Don't leave them. I think that's really important.
Tell them everything but also this is one step that is sometimes switched, and I think the training I did in Minnesota, they say administer Narcan right away. If somebody's overdosing, if they're not breathing, you know what I mean? Because sometimes I could get the phone up, call 911, you know what I mean? But it is good to call, especially if you don't have a lot of experience. Like if I witnessed one, I would just know what to, I'd still call 911, but I'd make sure I got the Narcan in their system right away.
Yeah. Because it does take a little bit.
Yeah, because they might ask a bunch of questions, and this person could be at past 2 minutes and may have brain damage, right? But yeah, definitely, call 911 regardless. Oops, did I do something? There we go. Okay, so
give the naloxone. So do you want to pull one of those out?
So this is what it looks like. And here's what our kit contains. I might as well show you guys this now. It has gloves. If you got time, you can put on gloves. And then some directions here. And it comes with 2 of them. Like I mentioned, nowadays, I think maybe 10 years ago, you might have just needed 1. Nowadays, it's good to at least have 2 on you. This is what it looks like. So when a person, should we go through? Yeah, let's go through all the steps. So this is what it looks like. So you want to put somebody on their back, right? So that's going to be the first step. Make sure that they're on their back. I'm gonna go through this. Yep. And then put your hand under their neck and kind of make sure that the nasal passageway is open and clear. And before you do this, actually, before you give rescue breaths, it's really important to check the mouth to make sure there's nothing in the mouth as well.
Can anybody guess what the most common thing found in people's mouths are?
More drugs?
Close.
Mm.
Needle caps.
But CPR training says not to do the swipe
Mhm.
anymore. I don't know if you guys can back that up.
I mean, this is updated very recently. I think.
But not just
Okay.
Oh, okay.
guys.
That's not what we were taught, but
Yeah, I mean, that's.
So to
to do the swipe. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's all about how comfortable people are, right? Like if you don't got gloves on you and if you don't, it's, yeah. So I mean, if,
elevate, I'm sorry, if it was not, it was just out of.
Right.
You can see that.
yeah. And thankfully, needle caps, which is the number one thing that is found, because you think about it, you take the needle out, take the cap off and you go like that. They're bright orange. So looking is probably good enough, right?
Yeah, maybe started looking,
Yeah. So then how you use it, right, is you take it out of the package and then it looks like this. It's a plunger. You put 2 fingers here. You're gonna put it all the way up one side of the nose. You don't have to block off the other nose or anything. And you're gonna plunge it all the way up to the bottom of your fingers, hit the tip of the nose. And I guess there's kind of a visual here, like that. So you're gonna allow 2 to 3 minutes for the naloxone to work. This is a point in time where you're gonna want to probably put like a timer on your phone, because that time is gonna go by so slow. I usually say like 2 minutes to see if they start breathing. So you want to keep giving naloxone if they do not start breathing.
why wouldn't you want to just give them more right away?
Because you want to wait and see if the effects start working. So it takes a minute for it to get to the
And
system.
also, if too much is administered, then they could go into that.
So this is kind of going into the different kinds. This is the injectable, like I mentioned. In Minnesota, this is what they give out. I think actually Wisconsin is going to, I heard recently that
Yeah, there's a push for the injectable. I don't know if it's because it's faster acting.
it's a lot cheaper too. It's way cheaper. Mhm. And we'll want to get cheap. So yeah, put it in the shoulder, thigh, or butt. Same thing, 2 to 3 minutes before you give another dose. We don't have these anymore. And then they have practice ones. Okay. So you're going to want to start rescue breathing. Basically, right? Sometimes, okay, if you do not have Narcan on you, which is common, rescue breathing can keep somebody alive until 911 comes or until the ambulance comes. But after you give the naloxone, you're going to want to start doing rescue breaths. And that's when it's important to do the mouth sweep or look, however you feel more comfortable. I've heard people say, well, can I give rescue breaths? What if they have fentanyl on their lips or I don't want to overdose, right? So it's really all about your comfortability. It really can keep somebody alive. It is really important in this step. So I've heard of people taking a piece of paper, ripping a hole in it and doing it that way. They also have masks. I don't have any of those on me right now, but I know that they do give them out oftentimes.
Not to give away.
No, I mean on site
Yes, we do.
in your kits.
Yeah, and our first aid kits. Yeah.
Nice.
I would assume most public buildings do.
I would assume so.
So, I've done a little bit of, not in River Falls
Okay.
that I know of yet. So,
Are you're asking about just the Narcan in general or the masks?
the mask. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know that information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
should be in that kit, yeah.
Yes. All right. So rescue breathing is the quickest way to get oxygen in the body. As I mentioned, it can really be the life-saving measure to keep, to prevent death. Follow 911 instructors. This is kind of goes over what we already talked about. When you're giving them, you're going to tilt the head all the way back with the chin up. Cover the person's mouth, blow 2 regular breaths, about 1 second each. Continue breathing, give one breath every 5 seconds. No, we're not going to go through the practice. Does anybody want to do this? And usually people don't.
Any volunteers?
Yeah. And then the recovery position is going to be this one. So you're gonna put one hand under the head, the leg over the leg, the knee over the top. And that's just gonna prevent in case they start vomiting and so that they don't choke on their vomit.
Is that common? Vomit?
It could be. So I mean, people coming out of an overdose, it will look different every time. And we just heard a story. I know when I have came out, you're not really super happy, right? Like you're in withdrawal, you're shaky, you're sick. So that's what the drug does, is it the naloxone kicks the opioid off the receptor, so your body goes in immediate withdrawal. So you could start vomiting, definitely. That's why the recovery position is important. Yeah. I think of the biggest symptom of coming out of a withdrawal is definitely just kind of confusion, right? And that's why it's really important to talk to the person and let them know, hey, you're going to be okay. This is what happened. You had an overdose. You're safe. You're all right. You're alive. Just make sure to be that compassionate person there for them and just care for them, care for the person.
And then going back,
Mhm.
the overdose again, is that what, just like they stop breathing again, so you lay that down?
Yeah, so that's when this pops off the receptor, right? So depending on how much the person, how strong the drugs are that they took, or their tolerance, it could be a lot of
Yeah.
things. But sometimes they'll come out of the overdose and then you'll start caring for them, and then all of a sudden they overdose again.
Like pass out.
Yeah,
Yep.
yep. The same symptoms as when you found them.
I'm gonna Narcan you again.
Yeah, yeah. They don't respond, then yeah. Stay with the person, keep the person calm, encourage the person not to take more opioids. If it happens again, give another dose of naloxone. Hopefully by all this time, EMS is there, right? And they can kind of take over, but you just never know. It does happen pretty quick though, to be honest. It depends on where you live and how far away they are. So this kind of goes into the help that is available. I wish I actually didn't bring I had some other resources, but we'll kind of go through some of those here in a minute. So there's a Wisconsin helpline 211 to get access to treatment if you have a loved one who's struggling. So laws and procedures. This is my favorite part. It's probably boring to some people, but I think it's really important to spread awareness about the different laws that we have. The first, carrying naloxone, which is, I think, it's the most important not the most important, but definitely one of the top ones. It's 100% legal to have naloxone on you. Anybody can have it. Anybody can administer it. You can give it to people. I know one time, this was a couple years ago now, but I saw on a community Facebook page, this lady was like, does anybody know how to get free Narcan? And I went to click on it to tell her, and this is at the time where I was doing it through Minnesota. So I had a bunch of the syringes and the vials. And I went to comment on it, and the comments were turned off, and people were so nasty to her. Like, why would you want to get Narcan? Why would you want to save, druggie, or why, are you on drugs? Kind of just like a lot of like hateful things. So she turned the comments off, and I messaged her and I was like, hey, I'm so sorry people were saying that. I have a bunch. If you need some, just please let me know. I ended up meeting up with her, and come to find out, her son, earlier that day, there was an overdose at the high school, and her son was in class with somebody who overdosed. So she was trying to become proactive and be like, gosh, I would hate for him to go through that again, or I don't want to go through that, so I kind of showed her how to do it. And but yeah, it felt a little weird going to meet with her at the gas station and be like, hey, here you go, coming from a life of drugs and crime. It felt kind of like a drug deal, but it felt good, knowing that, even 2 years ago, I knew that like it's totally legal. Anybody can have it. And she asked, can my son carry it? I'm like, yeah, your son definitely can. A 7-year-old could have it. You know what I mean? Like, obviously you might want like a little kid to have a syringe on them, but that's totally, if it's all about good faith, right? So if you have it on your person in good faith and you want to save somebody's life, and that's the purpose of having it, then it's legal, totally legal. So the Good Samaritan law, this is the one I feel like is very important. It kind of goes over. So when I was in active addiction, and sorry, I'm going to kind of go over that a little bit because it's my lived experience, right? And like, it's good to, kind of have a better understanding. But I've been sober for about 3 years now, and I had no idea about the Good Samaritan law back when I was using. I've witnessed a lot of overdoses, and I can say that none of them were the cops called. And I saw a lot of tragedy as a result of not knowing that we can call the cops and we won't get charged for it. You know, when you have a bunch of people together that are struggling with substance use, there's drugs, there's people that have warrants out for their arrest. So just this is a law I had no idea about. But it's basically saying that you can call 911 and seek help for somebody without being fear of prosecution, right? So they're not going to haul you off if you have a warrant. They're not going to search everything and charge you for all the drugs that are in the hotel room or whatever. This is a law that I think it's really important to, especially if you have people in your life that use drugs, just to make sure they're aware of it, right?
You supplied it, the person died.
So yeah, that was gonna.
There's exceptions to it.
Yeah, there's definitely limits to it. So yeah, that is I forgot what it's called. Drug-induced homicide. So yeah, if you're the drug dealer, and also another limit to it too. One of my friends recently got out. One of my best friends just got out of prison. He's actually the one that overdosed, and they broke his ribs. They had a Narcan him through the hospital like 8 times. He ended up going to jail 3 days after that. Once he got released from the hospital, and he went to prison for 2 years because he had set not drug user amounts. So there's limits to it, right? So like if you supplied the drugs to the person, or if you had enough, even if he was the person that overdosed, but he on his person had a couple ounces of drugs, which is enough to be, a drug dealer. So he ended up getting charged for it. But if you have normal drug user amounts, which is typically the case, then you are free from prosecution and you're safe by this law.
Sorry,
Mhm.
state of Minnesota, I know.
Yep. Yeah. So actually 49 states, I think the only one I always mean whenever I do these trainings, I think the only one that doesn't have a Good Samaritan law is the state that looks like has like the
Idaho.
Idaho.
Oh,
No, it's in Idaho.
is it?
No, it's like shaped like this. I don't know. Maybe it is Idaho. Yeah, I'm not good at geography either. So, yeah, there's only one state that doesn't have it. So there's also, does anybody have any more questions about that? So really quick, just essentially the Good Samaritan law encourages members of the public to aid others who need emergency care without the fear of being prosecuted or sued. And another interesting thing too, because I did a paper on this recently, is that it actually started because of some nurses and physicians back in, I think, the early 60s. They came across accident. They were not clocked in, they weren't at work, but they came across an accident and they started aiding, right? So they're like, well, I'm a doctor, I can help, And the person, I think they ended up dying, or something, but the doctor, the physician got sued. Yeah. So that's when they started the Good Samaritan law, saying that like whoever you are, if you're trying to save somebody's life, you're free from prosecution. So that's how it started. And it kind of evolved into also substance use and overdose.
Once you start, you have to continue until someone with more ability than you comes to relieve you. So if you start, I worked road construction, very dangerous.
Yeah.
So if you start, you need to stay there until either somebody who says they're certified in this or EMS comes.
Yeah, and that can, that's I think that's the Good Samaritan thing to do. But legally, I mean, even if you start and you get scared and you're like, wait a second, I don't know what I'm doing, you're not going to you're still, you had good faith going into it. So I think legally that maybe won't hold up, but obviously you'd want to do that, right? If you could save somebody's life, and maybe it could be different for road construction. So there's a standing order for naloxone, and this is basically saying that you can go, there's a list. I have the website actually is right here, and I can email you guys this list if anybody's interested in it. Basically anywhere now, and this list I think came from 2020 or something like that, but you can order it literally off of Amazon now, $44 for a 2-pack, right? You can go to Walgreens, Walmart has it. Anybody that goes there and says, hey, I could use this, I know somebody who could use it, you don't even have to explain yourself. If you need it, the pharmacy has to give it to you. So this is something that's kind of a result of the opioid epidemic.
If you don't have the money to pay for it, I know I can only speak for St. Croix County, but at the government center and at the services center, it's available, no questions asked.
And we're in the process actually of getting a harm reduction vending machine. So that's going to be a good resource. So if you have somebody, that might use drugs or could use Narcan and they might not feel comfortable going to ask the front office at the services center. There's going to be a vending machine that's free. And you can just press a button, get some Narcan, and walk out. So we're hoping to get that. We should know more soon. And
So apparently Kansas and Wyoming were the two states without good Samaritan.
Okay.
And Kansas just passed along in
Wyoming.
May. So now we're just down to Wyoming.
Wyoming. Okay, so maybe is that next?
So it wasn't Idaho at all.
So I don't. Is
I was going by the shape.
I don't me too. Hey. Okay. Formulation. So this is kind of going over like policies, distribution plans. This is more internal stuff. We are part of the Narcan Direct program in St. Croix County. Not all counties are a part of it. I don't think Pierce County is, neither is Polk. This is basically saying that like they supply us with these, and we give them out because we want naloxone saturation. We want to make sure that this is in the hands of people that can use it.
It's not doing any good on pallets.
Exactly.
So-
And we have, in St. Croix County, we have a lot, but we are giving out a lot too,
Yep. So I tried to kind of locate where in town you could go to get it. I know I kind of called around today and I got it's available at the university. I didn't get any clarification if it was only to students. And then the River Falls Alano Club, we have bins of them down there. So we're trying to
Naloxone
make it available
saturation.
more
is what I hear.
places. But so far,
As far as like a distributor, so like I have a church,
Mhm.
could someone come to me? Like,
We can bring you 5 boxes. We can bring you 50 of them. And if you know anybody that could, we upsell it.
Someone,
Yeah.
yeah.
If they even know somebody, you know what I mean? Like, we're kind of we need to switch our view of like naloxone, and especially for communities like Pierce and Polk counties that aren't part of the program or maybe are not so open-minded to it, to like an abundance mindset, right? Like, let's get this out in the hands of people. Even if you know somebody who might know somebody who might know somebody who could use it, here, take 10 of them. Hand them out, obviously don't leave them in your car. I like the idea, so there's a while there I was grabbing my box every morning, bringing it out to my car, during the winter time. But yeah, whatever we can do to get this out into the community, into the hands, and another important thing is that I think that it is 60%, don't quote me, 2 and 3 overdoses have a bystander. You know what I mean? So most people aren't alone.
well, the one from my last church in Michigan, it was a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old. They didn't have it at all.
Yep.
So it's like, you said a 7-year-old, I'm like, yeah, if he'd had it, he would use it.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. My daughter, she's 13 now, and she's been through hell and back with me with my addiction. That started when I was her age. I was 13 when I first touched hard drugs. And thankfully she's a great kid. But she knows. I've explained to her how to use it, like God forbid she ever needs to use it. And I pray to God she never has to. But just to know that she can, and she doesn't have to be afraid of it, and that it does no harm. I know it saves lives.
And I think the other thing too is like, I think we have kind of an idea of what someone who uses drugs looks like. I think the part that we got to recognize is it's not just people that use opiates specifically. It's kids that are experimenting. It's people that go to the bar and they do a line of cocaine and there's fentanyl in it. Like there's the drug trends are changing and it's not what it used to be. And fentanyl's in a lot of drugs now. So, something that they might think is acceptable, a party drug like Molly or something, you just never really know what you're getting anymore. So just being kind of prepared for, hopefully you never have to use it, but being prepared if that day does come. So.
And also something to keep in mind is the elderly or older population, they get hurt, they break a hip, something happens, they get put on opioids, and I know what previous trainer was talking about her grandma, she had kind of memory, she's getting older, memory loss. She forgot when the last time she took her pain meds, and she overdosed because she took the double dose and didn't realize it. Thank God for Narcan. Another example is another person that I heard of, but a family friend, the kid died. I think this was down in southern Wisconsin, but he, 16 years old in high school, smoked some weed that was laced with fentanyl, and he overdosed and died. So you really never know. And there's so many different scenarios of how, it could end up happening. Overdose prevention tips. Does anybody, ideas? So kind of going off of the stuff that we just said, even thinking about the elderly with, forgetting their medication times, or the kids experimenting, or can anybody think of any overdose prevention tips? I can think of one for sure. I can think of a few, but like lock boxes, right? For kids, so they don't get, so it's pretty cheap on Amazon. Actually, in St. Clair County, we just got like 100. Do we have one? Do you have one on you? A lockbox?
No, I was going to say that they're going to include, oh no, those are government.
Yeah. St. Clair County just, I think we guys got like 100 of them, but you can get them off Amazon. I think they're like $20, but it's just like a bag that has a zipper and a lock. Keep your medications in there so kids can't get a hold of it. Dogs don't.
I was going to grab the Deterra bags too for destroying your old medications.
We can grab it.
I'm going to step outside the box.
Uh-oh. Another thing is mixing substances is a huge one. So nervous system depressants, so alcohol, benzos, which is a certain kind of anxiety medication, opiates, they all are depressants, right? And when you mix them, there's a higher chance of overdose. So if you know somebody who is on Xanax, which is a common medication, or Suboxone, or any kind of opiate, and they're drinking, the likelihood of overdose is higher. So just being aware of that, and spreading that awareness and education could definitely prevent an overdose. Keep it in a safe place. Properly dispose. How do we properly dispose of medications that we don't, or drugs?
So they have events. Usually, I think there was one that just happened not too long ago.
Pharmacies have drugs.
Pharmacies. Otherwise, the county has the Deterra bags that are available. Same as the Naloxone, you can get it free of charge. Essentially, you just break it open, put your pills in there, add water, shake it up, and it's going to actually neutralize it. So you can throw it right into the garbage can.
Or you can put drugs in there too. And it's meant for, pills, but
pills, drugs, everything but marijuana. So just another option to get rid of any old prescriptions.
Yeah. Taking medication as prescribed for you, putting alarms on your phone for when to take your pain medication, or if you have a loved one that, is taking pain meds. Do not share prescription drugs with others. Breathing problems, do not mix pain medication with other drugs, including alcohol. Do not use opioids alone. So there's actually a few programs now. The one I know the most about is the Never Use Alone. So it's a phone number that you can have somebody call if they're going to be using any kind of substances, opiates in general. And then when you call them, all they ask for you is your exact location, and they ask your name, and that's it. And then you use your drugs while they're on the phone. And if they don't get a response from you after so long, I don't know how long it is. I've never used it. I think it's like 5 minutes or something. Then they call the ambulance for you in case they overdosed. And not only there's 2 programs like that. The Never Use Alone is a really good one. I've been following them for a minute now, but there's another program that's similar. And then there's also an app now that you have to tap, and if they don't get a response from you, they ding your location and send an ambulance there. So that 1 out of 3 people that are using alone that don't have a bystander, this is a way that, you can still try to be safe. And I have that information as well, if you guys want some afterwards. Start slow, know your dose. Make an overdose prevention plan. Share it with someone you trust, and give you Naloxone if needed. Okay, another really important thing too, if you know somebody who's getting out of jail or treatment, right? Pay extra attention to them. That's how a lot of my friends have died. I've had a few friends, one very close to me that, died that way. Got out of jail. Actually, he went from jail to treatment. He was sober for a little bit, and then he relapsed, and his tolerance wasn't what it used to be. So he used the same amount, and he overdosed and passed away. Always keep Naloxone on hand. And this is why it's important to saturate the streets with naloxone or Narcan. I always think this part's a little funny, only because from my lived experience, I think we've done all these things. So, although well intended, these methods waste valuable time. So,
Inject person with milk. I don't know why.
okay, I haven't done that one, but
I don't know why.
yeah, hitting somebody, I think that's the most common, right? I think that's natural reaction is you start slapping their face, wake up, right? Pour water on them, like wake up, like why, you snap out of it.
Cold shower, that's a common one I
Yep,
hear.
throw somebody in the bath. It just wastes time. You need to get the medication or start doing rescue breaths until the ambulance can come. This kind of just goes over, what could happen. If you induce vomiting, the person could choke. If you hit them, they could get bruises.
Does every overdose result in death without intervention, or could they snap out of it?
They could snap out of it. I mean, an overdose essentially is just a loss of consciousness, right? So somebody can lose consciousness, it might not be as severe as losing like their breath. Like I've seen, like I mentioned before, like in that instance where like you're nodded out and you literally like you can feel your breathing slowing down so much where it's like you're losing consciousness, right? But if the right intervention happens, they say don't do this stuff. But I have seen it where, you know what I mean? They kind of wakes them up a little bit where it's like, oh, and I have seen, like I mentioned, rescue breaths working. So
But if you're convinced they're getting overdose,
if they're not breathing, if their fingertips are blue and they're not breathing and their lips are blue, yeah, you have to give them Narcan ASAP. So these are additional resources. Is there any questions?
that's not the question.
Yeah. And I just want to make sure everybody knows we're not experts. We've just been doing this not too long.
Just kind of slowly start,
Not off.
and they all the way like.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the fentanyl kind
Is
of.
it definitely not like a cocaine or anything?
It's okay. It could be alcohol too. It's gonna be a downer. It's gonna yeah, it's gonna be a
Just because they
nervous system.
doesn't mean they're.
Right.
Yeah, they could be super. They could be. You never want to judge like where somebody's at, right? They could have been up for 5 days because they're homeless, right? But more than likely, it's a nervous system depressant that they're on. And oftentimes, when you see somebody folded over like that, it's usually an opioid, whether heroin or fentanyl. I can't. Yeah, and you're gonna continue to see it. Like when like I've had relapses throughout the years. Like I mentioned, I've been struggling with substance use since I was 13, and it wasn't until my last a few years of my addiction that I got into opiates, but just the change of like how many people you'd see like that, and just even going out there now. I was just out in the Twin Cities yesterday, and I mean, you see it. I mean, just driving around here, you see it.
I've seen it.
I at the park in Richmond, it's just. I hope it doesn't, but I feel like it's just going to continue to get worse and worse as fentanyl and opiates are.
More and more available.
Mm-hmm. And it's cheap. And that's the reason people switch from heroin to fentanyl. And
So earlier we talked about some of the hesitancy that folks might have because they're worried about, fentanyl contamination. I know there's some like urban legends about how toxic it is, like if you just touch fentanyl.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, about some of the myths and realities of fentanyl toxicity?
I mean, it is strong, but I think that,
You have to ingest it.
yeah.
So your fingertips aren't gonna.
If there's a cut on your fingertips or if you have any open sores, if you oftentimes you hear about the cops, right? Like the cop overdose because they were, that's more than likely, like oftentimes fentanyl is a powder form. It's the natural form of it. If it's windy out, or if you get some, it comes up into your, while you're breathing, that's going to elicit an overdose. If it gets into your skin, if you have it on your skin, you touch your nose or your mouth, that could elicit an overdose. You hear people, I've seen this on like, Facebook and stuff, like somebody finds a dollar bill that has fentanyl in it, right? And they're like, oh, they're trying to kill somebody, like, cause they want somebody. That's not the truth. I mean, people just drop stuff, you know what I mean? Like people literally just drop stuff. It is toxic, but it needs to be adjusted somehow into the bloodstream. Mm-hmm. And another thing too, we have fentanyl testing strips, which I do not have any on me right now. I think that we're out currently at the county unless we got.
I haven't seen any there.
Yeah, I know that they were trying to get more right now. I'd say that, as I mentioned, almost all of the heroin nowadays has fentanyl in it. And I'll just say from my experience and from what you hear, people are going from heroin to fentanyl. People want fentanyl because it's cheaper, it's way stronger, people aren't testing their heroin to make sure there's no fentanyl
It's
in
more
it.
for people that are getting cocaine or meth or something where that might be
Yeah.
of benefit because that's not what they want. So
Yeah, but it's a lot more so for like people that are going out and drinking and buying a bag of Coke, test it to make sure there's no fentanyl in it first, because those are the people that don't want the fentanyl. You can test anything with these testing strips. And if anybody needs, we have our cards too. If you guys want some, once they become available, we'll get you as many as we can. And what was your name?
Yeah, my question was about where you ended with the question, but the prevalence like of just the drug presence, but also like percentages of overdoses and things like that. You indicated that it seems to be on the rise.
Mhm.
I mean, you mentioned Queen City, but Wayne Baines,
Wisconsin.
well, I know we're not immune to it, and again, I'm new, so I'm wondering if we can share. No,
So I can tell you just in the last 2 months, I know 2 people that have overdosed. My next door neighbor actually in River Falls, I'm sorry. And then Polk County. As far as statistics go, I think we have some national stuff.
I have some Wisconsin
Oh,
stuff.
good.
So the official numbers for everything's like a year and a half behind, right? So in 2020, there was 1,227 people in the state of Wisconsin that overdosed and died from opiates. 2021, there was 1,427. So it's 200 more than the previous year. I can only imagine it's going up. And I mean, that's an assumption. I don't know. Hopefully, the naloxone saturation is going to help this situation. But I just think with the amount of opiates that are out there and the strength of them, it's probably going to keep going up. So those are the only real big statistics I have. I know that I follow, on Facebook, you see we follow somebody, we both follow him,
Gary.
Yeah. Gary, he posts all like the scanner stuff, and I actually reached out to him recently. I'm like, do you have any statistics about overdoses? And he's like, oh, there's been a lot lately.
There's a lot.
There's
We
so
see it's like
in the
almost
Tri-County area, Polk, Pierce, St. Croix, there's
like
just
every 5 calls, it's an overdose.
Yeah.
It's
a lot more than you'd think. It just
Statistics are just people.
Yeah,
correct.
exactly. So we're talking about calls.
Yep.
Yeah, the statistics are just deaths. There's been way more. And you have to think about it too. Like all the overdoses I've seen, thankfully that were saved with Narcan, not all of them, but most of them, they weren't reported. And people get this, we still want to get it out to save people's lives, but those aren't going to be reported. The actual overdoses, the fatalities, yes, but sometimes even that data can get mixed, somewhere along the line. So.
So a question, I mean, kind of pushing this down into younger, I mean, I hope you're on college campuses, high school campuses, middle school, like what is the problem pushing this? Skilled more frequently.
Yeah, so I think the school administrators are more open to it. Then it's still kind of an uphill battle, and I think a lot of it is just
Acceptance.
and education too. People just don't understand like the science behind it and how Narcan actually works. And I just say, I mean, we did a presentation not that long ago, and people just don't understand it. And I think the big thing is the argument that it enables people to continue drug use, and that's just not the case.
And get statistics to back that up.
So there's not like any hard, at least I don't have any on me right now, but there is a lot of statistics as far as harm reduction programs go. So people who attend harm reduction programs, so that could be a needle exchange program, but needle exchange programs and naloxone distribution states go hand in hand. So people that attend those programs are 5 times more likely to see long-term recovery. 5 times, so I don't know about death rates, but people that can actually get sober, because you think about it, if you're meeting with somebody who has Narcan, they're probably like, they have your best interest, right? And they might be somebody who actually cares about you and is like, hey, when you're ready and you need help, let me know, right? So people that go to these harm reduction programs, like they're seeing resources on the wall. They're talking to a human that's like, how can I help you? Come back when you're ready, right?
I mean, we're out in the community, we're doing these trainings,
Yeah.
we're connecting with people, and people come up to us all the time afterwards like, hey, my sister is really struggling. How do I, so we're able to connect with people in that way. Yeah.
I think that as time goes by, there'll be more statistics that come out.
And you can't, somebody can't change their life if they're dead. So,
That's what it comes down to. Let's keep them alive until they're ready to get sober. I think that's a misconception. It's like, yeah, it's a tough one.
So could you mention that that all supplies last, we'll have Narcan here at the library, and also will we be happy to take any of your brochures or handouts?
For sure, yeah. Yeah, so we do peer support. We have some peer support brochures, and it is for St. Croix County, but it's for St. Croix County residents, but you can still give it out. And
Yeah, well, the library is in St. Croix County.
oh yeah, it is.
Yeah, we're right over the line here.
Street. Okay, Division Street. True. I do have some peers here. Yeah, we're gonna leave. We have 2 boxes, and we have more back in St. Croix County at the services center. I just brought 2 boxes, so we have 20 kits here. We're gonna leave everything here for you guys, and anybody who is watching online can come and grab some.
And we're absolutely open if anyone watching or anybody in the room, we have an abundance of Narcan. We want to get it out into the community. So if there's anybody that needs some or wants some or wants, to have some available for other people,
Yep.
just let us know
Let us
and
know.
we'll make sure that you guys can get some.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this was a half hour, turned into an hour presentation.
Mm.
Do you have like if I was to hand out something, I'd be like,
Yeah.
here's a real website, like here's how to do, like you said, where you are.
Yeah. So the kits actually have, yep, it has a little pamphlet. It actually is just a copy right from the actual box.
And actually, I have a bunch of Narcan administration cards that have a QR code that it'll take you right to a video.
A video
which is
too.
super cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you guys just let us know. We'll leave our information here. We have our own, we have our cards as well that has our phone number on there. Take whatever you can that we have here.
We don't want to bring it back with us.
We're not gonna bring it back.
Yeah, we'll leave it.
Over.
We'll leave it.
Yeah. But also, like if you want to bring some to the church, take my number down and we can meet up and I can give you a few boxes,
That's awesome.
Yeah, whatever we can do to get it out to the hands of people that can use it. And kind of bouncing back to your question. So when I first started doing these trainings, I did one at the New Richmond School District. And unfortunately, this is something that I think we've talked about in our peer support communities, but they only wanted to do it with the nurses of the school district. So they just had, the nurse from each school come and then we did a training. It was my first ever training. This was a while back, but I was kind of like, why not all the teachers and why not the students? I mean, at least the high school students, and so like the story I mentioned when I met up with that lady whose son, he was in the car with her. I gave him a demonstration. This is how you're going to do it. I hope you never have a kid overdose in class again. But if you do, at least you'll know how to do it and hope maybe you'll have it on you. And I just a disclaimer, I don't know if, if the kids, if it goes against school policy to have it on them, I'm going to let my kid take it to school, unless they say not to, but yeah, I think that it just needs to become more public and more, we just need to spread awareness about the truth, that it's not a substance that people can get high off of. I think that's another one that people think, it only saves lives. Anybody else have any questions?
Thanks so much.
All right.